Alright, and hello, and welcome to, well, the inaugural season of TCR Oz here at Automobilista Australia. And this evening it is myself, Lewis Wedding, and I've been joined in the commentary box. So, mysterious stranger, introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Zalavari. And if you were watching the last season of Oz TCAC, the Touring Car Association Championship, that might be where you've heard my name and my voice before. So it's a pleasure to be here to commentate on TCR, and it's a pleasure to be commentating with you, Lewis.
Well, I'm certainly glad to have someone join me in the commentary box because, as we've seen in TCC in past couple seasons, commentary on one's own in these kinds of series where the racing is quite frenetic can be quite difficult. So to have someone join alongside is I'm certainly very grateful for that, and hopefully this first round puts on a show for you and for everybody watching back live and the drivers when they come around and watch this at a later date.
Yeah, well, if the racing is anything like the real touring car, uh, well, what's this TCR tour? What does TCR even stand for? Touring car racing? Is that it?
I actually, I th- honestly couldn't tell you. I think it's touring
Yeah.
car racing, but
Well, there you go. Well, if this is anything like it is in real life, then we'll be in for a treat.
well, it certainly will. And as you can see, Brendan Ross has just gone to the pits, but if you could look at that timing tower, 1:35.5, fastest time of all the practice sessions so far. And then we've got Michael Ford, Preston second away, Davies 2 tenths away, and Foley's now jumps up 4 tenths up in front, so perhaps he's taken a bit of fuel out as well as the track rubbering up. But it's a very, very competitive field. Now, there are a number of differences between the TCC series that we just ran and this TCR Oz series. The first one being there's not going to be any success ballast that was run in previous seasons where certain drivers would pick up a certain reputation of being quite decent steerers, and they'd end up picking up some ballast for their troubles. So that is a thing of the past. So now it's all up to the drivers and the teams and to set up a car that's going to work for them. And
So, sorry to jump in. Why was that decision made?
well, we thought, why not? We've had a couple races in the past. There was one in the end of the first season, and I do believe at the end of the second season as well, with the final race of each of those seasons where weight was taken off. And after the feedback from all the drivers, they thought, well, just scrap it and let them just go at it. But at least for this inaugural season of TCR, there's not going to be any success ballast, and it's going to be about who's the best driver and best team out there.
Fantastic. That's what I love to hear. Nothing better than a good straight up dogfight between the best of the best, or this mob.
Yep. And another change, obviously Marcas, which was the previous, well, the series was based, TCC was based on those cars, and that series for the most part, they had rolling starts, and for TCR, they do not. They have standing starts, so that is another change, and these cars will be very, very difficult to get off the line. Now, we do have a couple start specialists around here. We know Ricky Slick is one of them. He's got, I do believe he's got a McLaren Formula rim, which has the old hand clutches, double hand clutches. So here's one to
Ooh.
look out for off the start line. And it will certainly make things interesting. Now, it has ticked over to qualifying. So we just wait and see as it ticks over and wait for drivers to go out there and set their laps. Now, the qualifying sessions have remained the same. Every driver has one chance. So they're given 3 laps, but that means you only get one shot at a lap. And we already have one of our drivers out there. Looks like Corey Preston has left the pits, although it looks like a bit of lag has walked him into the wall. So we'll just hide that for a moment until the game, I think, resyncs, because I think it's just a bit out of sync. There we go. And there we are. So now he's on your screen.
So who have we got coming out at the moment?
So we've got Corey Preston will be the first car to set a lap, and we've got a guest driver as well back there. So I'm just trying to shuffle my way through here. Hayden Warrington.
So you better. So what do you think some people will do here? It looks like we've got a few people lining up straight away to start as soon as they can. But the danger with that is if you're on a hot lap and a car, as we go green on this session, and a car is just coming out of the pits to warm up, you could run into some pretty heavy traffic. So do you think some of the bigger hitters, the FCR guys who had the run of the mill in practice, do you think they might come out a little later when the track's a little more clear?
Well, FCR are notorious in that they wait until the last possible moment to go out. So I wouldn't expect those guys to leave the pits until probably even about 3 or so minutes, maybe even 2.5 minutes remaining, as Warrington runs off the road there in the guest car. So just to go and run through some of the cars for you, because we haven't got a splash screen with all the cars and drivers. So on your screen, as you can see, that is Corey Preston. Behind him is the Peugeot of Hayden Warrington. And then in the Volkswagen behind him, who's trying to hustle his way through the field. Sorry about this.
That, I think,
that's
is
Scott
Steve
Nolan.
Scott Nolan.
Scott.
I always get them confused with TCAC as well.
Yeah, he's running in a blank livery, but he will have his Synergy Sim Racing livery in the update after round 4. He's in the Volkswagen, and he wants to start his lap as soon as possible, because it looks like he's trying to race Corey Preston. But hopefully these guys do realise, because a few of these guys haven't raced in this series before, or in Preston's case, he hasn't raced in it for over a season and a half, I believe. So hopefully they remember that you only get one shot at this. And they've got Turmo in one of the better looking liveries, the very similar to the Russell Ingall TCR car, the MPC Melbourne Performance Centre Castrol Racing Audi RS3. And we've got Thomas Paul also in the other guest Peugeot car. We've also got a guest BMW as well.
That's for Lime Mitch.
Yep, Lime Mitch. Yep, he's the other one. And on your screen right there, Cracker Racing Team. Black and gold. Very simple livery. Very reminiscent of Johnny Play Special and the Lotus F1 team circa 2012. Very simple.
Just quickly,
but basic.
While you're running through the grid, we have had the first cars commence their first flying lap. So Corey Preston and Scott Nolan.
Yeah, Scott Nolan, yep.
Come through the first timing sector. So the timing sector is here at Sydney Motorsport Park, just before turn 5, where Corey Preston is now, sets a 30.050 to be the fastest car there at the first sector, unsurprisingly. Next timing sector is just after the hairpin at turn 8, and then that runs all the way through to the end of the lap. As Corey comes around that little dog leg at turn 6 and into Corporate Hill at turn 7. Is that the right name?
I wouldn't have a clue. When I have a look at the track map when I was putting together a little graphic for it, it just had corner numbers. It didn't have the names for any of the corners. So
that's pretty slack.
I'll have to check Wikipedia. That'll probably have the names. But anyway, Preston was one of the fastest in practice. So he's
proving to be one of the fastest so far. He's purple to the first and second
sector. Very scruffy. Very, very scruffy. That won't be a track cut because he can run very, very wide there, but he has certainly lost a significant chunk of time, and then he's very, very wide again. That might be a track cut running on the grass out there though, but we will see as he crosses the line, and it will be a 35.7. So compared to his practice time, he's a 10th off, but he could have gone much, much faster. You've got to say, at least 3/10 faster. Scott Nolan, just half a 10th away. Thomas Paul, very newcomer to Automobilista Australia, only registered this afternoon, showing his interest. 7/10 off, so a good start from him. Then we've got Brownie, 1.5 seconds away from Mr. Paul. And Hayden Warrington's had an accident after his lap.
He was slow in the second sector. Well, he was slow everywhere, but he was especially slow in the second sector, which is why his lap is that far off.
We've got Turmo set a lap time as well, 1 minute 37.6. So I don't think he'll be too happy with that, because we do know Turmo is quite handy in these cars, and he set a 36.2 in practice. So he's made a mistake, or possibly had some traffic that's compromised him. So just stick with Michael Ford, because he was another one of the fast runners in practice. He set a 35.6. So 2/10, or pretty much 3/10 off in the first split. But if he keeps it together in this middle sector and keeps it together in the final sector, he will be a chance for pole position, as we did see Preston really muck up the final 2 turns.
Yeah, and that's going to be the big thing is we've got a bit of a yellow flag in turn one. I wonder what's caused that. I might just be traffic. That last sector is going to come back to haunt Corey Preston. I can almost guarantee it because we saw times in practice down in the 35 flat range. So it's going to be that I don't think that benchmark from Corey Preston is going to stand for long, if longer than this lap from Michael Ford, who's looking very smooth out of the hairpin there.
Not a great middle sector though. Did lose 4/10 of a second. That makes him 7/10 down overall. Almost loses it on the curb at the penultimate corner there, but nice and smooth. And a much better run through that final corner for Michael Ford. So we should see how much he gains in the final sector. So it will be interesting how much, because he was 7.5 tenths down at the second split. Now what is it as he crosses the line? 1/10. He's only 1/10 away. So there's 6/10 of a second that Corey Preston threw in the bin after mucking up that run into the final corner there. And that will be something to look out for at this track. In these cars in particular, we did see in TCC, these front-wheel drive cars, and even in supercars as well, once that rear end gets a little bit light, you've got to straighten the car out. And if you don't do that before turning in, the car pendulums around it will spit you to the right-hand side into the barrier. So,
and keep in mind, these are all front-wheel drive cars as well. At least I think they are. They should be front-wheel drive.
Yeah, all front-wheel drive.
Yeah, so it means that getting that nose tucked in and making sure that it's gripped up at the front and the rear is following is going to be extremely important because, yeah, you can't power slide out of it.
Yeah, you have to maintain pretty much throttle until you straighten the car out, as we see Cracker go through there. He's nice and smooth. 1.4 down at the second split, but he should gain some time in the final sector. So 1.4 off, that would put him behind Thomas Paul, but in front of Turmo.
Just quickly, the armada of FCR cars have just pulled out of the pit lane, along with the car of, I think that was Gary Neville as well. Sorry, Glenn Miles in the Playboy Racing Focus. Yes. So they're all coming out and leaving it very late for their run, but we expected that, didn't we?
Yeah, it was I did say 3 minutes, maybe even 2.5, and well, if 3 minutes 5 seconds, they've all gone out and left the pits. So no surprise there. They always leave it until late. And we see that in the Supercar Series. We've seen it in TCC, and once again, continue it in TCR Oz. Now, just looking at Matt Cecil. This is one of his first races at Automobilista Australia. He's 2.9 seconds down. Just trying to have a look at what lap time he set in practice.
Just quickly, Lime Mitch has had an absolute shocker of a run onto the back straight. He got blue flagged in the middle of the last corner, so he's going to be slow down the end of the straight, which will translate into a few tenths of a second come that first sector mark.
Well, hopefully it doesn't cost him too much, but certainly not an ideal start to his season.
Well, he's off in turn one as well, so maybe it might be a bit more.
All right, so Cecil crosses the line. Got Foley, Neville. Well, Neville's just starting his lap, but last year's TCC protagonists still about half a lap away from starting their laps. We've got Nether Relmian. He's on a lap at the moment, so we'll stick with him, watch how he goes on his lap.
He's in that little group that are about half a second away from the top of the field. Maybe not now. He's 4 seconds away. I wonder what happened in that sector for Never.
He must have had an off somewhere in that middle sector, because that's cost him a lot of time. But if you do continue your lap times, you can pick up quite a few spots, as what happened in TCC. You'd have people throw it off the road and then just press escape. And then some of the smarter ones would have it off and continue, set a lap time, and they'd be a couple of spots higher than if they just pressed escape. So now that crosses the line, 40.6. His last sector is okay, but that's been costing him dearly in the end. And just go back to Gary Neville now.
Neville had a pretty decent first sector as well, 30.4. So he's up there ahead of that little group, which includes Hathaway, Paul, Bolger and Cracker.
He's a second off in the middle sector, so not too bad. If he can have a decent final sector, I was in a practice with him the other day, and his first and last sectors are actually quite decent. So if he strings it all together, he could be in line for a very decent starting position for race one here.
Speaking of stringing it all together, Ricky Slick at the moment's fastest first sector time, a 29.9, ahead of Brenton Ross with a 30.06, and everyone else as well. So he's on a phenomenal lap as
And
he comes through.
unfortunately, he's got Brendan Ross right in front of him, so that's going to cost him a bit of time. He's half a second down in the middle sector, but if he puts together a decent final sector, he should still get pole position. But
And that's the end of the session, just quickly as well. So 0 on the clock. This is the last. Well, this is the flying lap for these guys.
yeah, so 29.8 from Foley as well. So Foley's gone even faster, and I don't think Foley's got any traffic. So Ross will cross the line first. He jumps up to P1. So fantastic lap for Brendan Ross. Slick didn't have a good finish to his lap, so he'll be quite frustrated that he come across Brendan Ross when he did. And now we just try and go back and find Brenton Foley and see how he's managing. He was significantly faster than everybody else in the practice session, but his middle sector, 10th, almost 2/10 down on Brendan Ross. So in a big slide, but I don't think that'll cost him too much time actually, and it actually sets him up nicely for the second part of the final turn. So how will his final sector fare between himself and Ross?
Just big drag down to the line here. He lost 4/10 in that middle sector to Ross. He's about to come across the line and slots in 6th, so even just ahead of Ricky Slick for that matter.
And so, as you can see on your screen, we'll just scroll up to Brendan Ross, who's doing some reverse does. He's very happy with his lap, but time's absolutely, well, nowhere near the fastest time set in practice. But if you look at your timing tower on the left-hand side, the top 10, well, the top 5, top 6, top 7, separated by 7/10, or sorry, separated by 2/10 of a second. So very, very close between the top 7. Then we've got sort of our second tier with Hathaway, Gary Neville,
Thomas Paul, Steve Bolger, and Cracker. Sorry to finish that. I'll finish that one off for you. I'm looking at the timing screen as well.
Yeah, just having a look there, and yeah, all those guys very, very close. So we've got a distinct couple tiers, but very, very close between all those guys. So should be very, very interesting race one, that's for sure. Anyway, we'll just take a short break as we've got to conduct the driver's briefing, but we shall be back for race one in 10 minutes' time. Alrighty, and welcome back. Fortunately, had a very long drivers briefings. Had quite a number of new runners, so had to go over, and being a new series as well, had to go over quite a number of the rules and changes for this season. So got an additional 5 minutes for drivers to go to the toilet and practice their starts, as it is standing start this time as opposed to rolling start. And as you can see on your screen, that is the location. Eastern Creek, Australia. 3.93 kilometres. I haven't updated the turns because I'm a pleb. But there's 18 turns on this circuit, not 11. And 2 races this evening. Second race being reverse grid, which is just like TCC last season. And the format 2 25-minute races. And then once time expires and the leader crosses the finish line, there's 1 extra lap. So, Michael, as we saw in, especially with Corey Preston's lap and a number of the drivers in practice, turn 16 and 17 will be, I think, and from obviously my own experiences in practice, that will be the corner to look out for. It's very easy to make a mistake and lose the rear under braking there.
Yeah, and it's because it's going. The profile of the corner changes as you're going through it, so it actually tightens up a lot more than you expect on exit. I love that corner at Eastern Creek. In fact, I love a lot of these corners at Eastern Creek. It's just a shame that it's in Eastern Sydney. What? I didn't say that.
And under power lines and all that.
Yeah, all the other things you love about racetracks. No, Eastern Creek is an awesome track, and I can't wait to see these guys go around here. It's going to be really cool.
It is.
What's your favorite part? Sorry to jump in. What's your favorite part of this track?
Well, I was gonna bring up. I think turn 1 is another one that is a very fine line. And I think a lot of the differences between the drivers is going to be through turn 1 and 16 and 17. But turn 1 is very fun. Just a little dab of the brake, straight on the throttle, and then hang on for dear life. And then you got the braking zone to turn 2 right after it. So that's a fun section. And then I love absolutely abusing the curb at turn 6 as well, and then getting a nice exit. That middle section in general is actually quite nice. In these cars, is very fun to drive.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite section of the track. The plunge down from the top of turn 3 into 4, and then getting the switch back into 5, and that little bit of a dog leg at 6 that encourages you to just do a bit of a Scandinavian flick into there. I love that section of track, and yeah, that's one of the reasons why.
Yeah, 4, 5, 6, and then you've got 7 and 8. Very fun section, and things to look out for, I think, in these races. The tyres, that front right tyre, it's going to cop a bit of a shellacking, and then with the extra power and the same tyre model, I think drivers are going to be in for a bit of a shock with some of the tyre wear they do get, and wheel spin as well. So towards the end of the race, you might see a couple of drivers that are a bit quick actually start losing a bit of time because they've overused their tyres.
Yeah, that's something we see a lot in the real deal as well. The real TCR races around Australia and the world. Are they doing increased tyre wear in this series at all, or is it 1 times and 1 times fuel?
It's just 1 times fuel or 1 times tyre. So even with the 1 times, drivers still use up quite a decent amount of the tyres. And once you get to about that 50%, even 60% range, there is quite a difference in lap time. You can get the tyres to hold on for quite a while, but it is all about setup and certainly driving style. You've got to be very smooth, especially with the extra power these cars have now. You'll be very smooth with your right foot. Otherwise, you're going to be spinning your tyres up and you're going to be wrecking those tyres.
So you might even see some drivers in the early laps try to disengage from battles they might be in, just to try and preserve those tyres for the late stages. And at the end of the day, exactly right. And you see a bunch of guys, even races like the V8 supercars do that very well. I think one of the best at it is Shane van Gisbergen, who very much likes to run long and hold on to his tires and then make use of what he's got towards the end of the race. So we might see one or two guys trying to use what they got at the end of the race.
I think so. So I think we saw it in TCC. There's drivers that are just out and out quick, but their cars fell away or the tyres fell away towards the end. And there's others that were able to use their tyres well, and they still had a little bit in the end if they needed it. So Brenton Foley, obviously 3-time TCC champion, only man to win the series. I think he's definitely one to look out for. Not starting from the best position, but he is certainly one to look out for as a driver who is very, very decent on his tyres and very, very smart as well. Anyway, formation lap is underway, and Michael, why don't you run us through the grid?
Perfect. So from the front row, we've got Brendan Ross in the FCR Volvo, followed by Corey Preston in that Audi immediately behind. We've got Volkswagen featuring with Scott Nolan in third, and then Lada with Michael Ford from fourth position. Awesome car there. We'll tell a story about that later on, I'm sure. Next up is Dwayne Davies in the Ford Focus, a car I wish was in TCR. And it's Brendan Foley in the second of the Volvos, pardon me. And then immediately behind Ricky Slick in the Camo Volvo for FCR. Behind them is Mitchell Hathaway in the HDS Racing Audi. And then Gary Neville in the FCR Motorsport, I believe. That is also a Volvo. We've got someone off in the background.
Paul, yeah, Thomas Paul has had a spin. And he's our first victim of the damage model. He probably doesn't have significant damage, but it just looks like it because these cars have very, very, for whatever reason, the panels are very, very sensitive on them. But he was going to be starting in 10th, behind Gary Neville.
Yeah, and then next is Stephen Bolger in the Alfa Romeo Giulietta, which I absolutely love, by the way. Cracker is next in the list in 12th, and then it's Lime Mitch in the BMW. Following him is Termo in that awesome-looking Audi that looks like Russell Ingall's car. Next is Brownie in the second of the Cracker Brown Dog Racing cars. Luke Joyner, Matt Cecil, Brian Walsh, Nether, Hayden Warrington, and newcomers, people who missed qualifying, Zach, Glenn Miles, and Steve Burko to round out a 23-car grid.
Well, we've had an off. We've had an off there, as Zach has dinged the barrier. Thankfully, he's not broken his car, but there's a little bit ding on the left-hand side. But yeah, Zach and Burko are having trouble in practice and qualifying, are having some mismatches. But it's good to see. That means we have all manufacturers on the grid. And another stat, we've got 5 different manufacturers in the top 5.
It's almost like the real deal.
Yeah, so it's very, very encouraging signs with the Volvo, Audi, Volkswagen, Lada, and then Ford Focus, all in the top 5. And this is going to be interesting for the drivers. Standing start, front-wheel drive, a lot of power, not much grip. As we see Steve Burko lining up at the back there.
Only seconds away from the first TCR race for Automobilista Australia here. Let's see how we go.
All right. Looks like we're all formed up. 1 light, 2 light, 3, 4, 5. Away we go. Gary Neville's jumped the start, unfortunately. Looks like Preston's got a decent start. He's going to try and make his way around the outside. A little bit of contact between Rossi and Preston. Preston's lost a mirror out of that. And Preston trying to hold on around the outside at turn 1.
Ooh, a little bit of contact there, but they make it through just.
They're coming up to turn 2 now. This is where a lot of drivers are going to try and make up positions. Dwayne Davies had a shocking start. He's been hit by Hathaway there, and that's forced him wide. He's not going to be too happy with that. But
Preston takes the lead. Preston takes the lead. He did a beautiful over-under to take that position as Brendan Ross ran wide in the middle of the corner. So Preston leads from Ross, from Nolan, from Foley at the top 4 of the field.
Yeah, so not the greatest start from Ross. He did try to close down Preston, and he was ahead at turn 1, but couldn't quite hold on at turn 2.
Oh, there's bumpers and bits flying off everywhere further down the field as people make a little bit of contact coming into turn 6. It looks like Warrington's made a cracking start from the rear of the field up to 5 spaces into 15th as they all filter through into
And
the hairpin.
got Nolan having a look up the inside of Ross. Ross gives him a bit of space, but Preston's sort of weaving on each of the straights when there's been a car behind him, so I don't know what the hell he's doing, but side by side, Ross and Nolan through the final 2 turns that Ross concedes. And Nolan will take that place. So not a good start for Brendan Ross, but he's just got to get his head down now and just focus and try and work his way back into the lead.
Maybe Preston's trying to get some warmth into his tyres. They come down the main straight for the first time in this 25-minute race. It is Preston from Nolan from the 2 FCR Volvos. They plunge into turn 1. Foley and Ross there in 3rd and 4th. And they're making contact. They're spreading wide as they go into turn 2. It looks like
going
Ross
for the move. He's going to outbrake himself. This is going to be good news for Foley. He tried to get up the inside of Nolan, but Nolan shut the door. That's Foley. Very, very clever fox. Almost took 2 positions, but had to settle for the 1 of his teammate. So another spot loss for Brendan Ross, who did start from pole position. And he's now down in 4th place. And a bit of contact between himself and Ford. So Ford's lost his splitter, and Ross has lost his bumper, but that won't affect him with that little minor contact. That's just the way this mod is, unfortunately.
Yeah, just a little further back, Ricky Slicks under the pump from Luke Joyner as he dives down on the inside of turn 6 and makes that position. But Ricky's looking like he might be able to take the inside line into 7, not quite.
He's very, very close. He's going to try and send it at the hairpin, I reckon. But Joyner in the middle of the road. And,
he's made contact and he's off. Oh, no.
That was Lai Mitch, actually, between the 2.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, they're very, very close. Gary Neville still hasn't served his penalty. Another one that's gone backwards is Dwayne Davis. He's lost 5 spots at the start, but he will make one of them up when Gary Neville does pull into the pits. Thomas Paul's up 2 spots from where he started. Hathaway up 1. Slick up 1. But obviously he had a bit of contact there between himself and Lai Mitch, who's now down in 17th. So Preston leads. But the top 4, there's nothing between them at the moment. Top 4, 7/10 of a second. So early on, it is very, very close.
And it looks like Preston's got a little bit of room as Nolan goes a little wide at 1. And it's kind of given the 2 FCR cars behind them, Ross and Foley, a little bit of chance to get more into the mix. But Nolan does very, very well there to close the door and keep the 2 Volvos behind. So yeah, there's a bit of a split now. It's more the top 5 or 6 with a bit of a gap towards the rest of the field. But this battle at the front is certainly going to be enthralling for the next 21 minutes.
Well, in qualifying, it was that sort of couple tiers. The first tier was about 5 or 6 different cars. And we've got big slide from Preston. I think he got on the grass at turn 6 on the braking zone. He was able to save it by getting on the power, but that's allowed Nolan into the lead. Foley having a look as well, but Preston closes the door. But he's now having a look, but not quite close enough to make the move. But yeah, I think he got on the grass. In fact, we'll go back and have a look at that. So yeah, so Preston on the grass under braking was able to save it by getting on the throttle. So he's lucky he's a front wheel drive, because if it was rear wheel drive, he was gone.
Oh, speaking of gone, he's off now. He's off at turn 17. He's in the...
No, he saved it. Once again, front wheel drive power has saved him there. And we'll have a look at that replay as well. So
yeah, so I think... Where am I? Oh, no, nothing's working for me. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I think he's just lost it on his own. He's got on the curb, unsettled the rear again, and then had to avoid the back of Nolan, and that's why he went wide and onto the grass. So that was all him. And that's him now down to 6 after leading. And he's got Hathaway, who's got past Thomas Paul on that last lap, and Hathaway looking quite decent at the moment. And Ricky Slick, he's closed up onto the back of Michael Ford. So even though we've got a new leader, the front 5 still relatively close together.
Yeah, just quickly further down the field, Dwayne Davies has now got the fastest lap of the race, a 35.7. So not the electrifying pace we were seeing in qualifying, but at this stage of the race, and keeping in mind the tyres are going to drop off, still pretty impressive pace as he's right on the back of Thomas Paul in the Peugeot guest car as they come through 5 into 6.
Well, he did qualify in the top 5, did Dwayne Davies. Did, as we know, as you can see, down in 9th place at the moment, didn't have a very good start or first lap, but he has got pace, so hopefully, he'll be hoping he can just pick his way through the field and the cars in front continue the battle and he stays in the game as he shows his nose at the hairpin. A big slide from Paul in front of him, and Davies is going to race him a little bit. I think he's going to back out of it though, and he's going to probably try and get him into turn 2, because turn 1 probably just a bit too quick.
Yeah. Another person looking to make a move at turn 2 is Brendan Foley, who's set the purple first and middle sector as they come onto the back straight. He is all over the rear bumper of Scott Nolan as they cross the line to start lap 5.
35.1. That would have put him on pole by 0.6 of a second.
Huge lap time.
Big slide from Nolan. Race. Big slide, and going to be side by side. Is Foley close enough? No, Nolan closes the door. He continues to leave it. Foley all over the back of him. And a number of drivers now locking up. And Dwayne Davies did get that move done, so he is past Thomas Paul. We'll have a look at that on the replay. So Paul must have had a bad exit out of the final corner. Yes, he did. Bad exit. And easiest move that Dwayne Davies will have to make this evening.
Oh, Foley's in the inside of Nolan as they go into turn 6. Is he going to be able to make the move here? Not.
Both drivers giving each other space. Both of them giving space, but they are racing hard. Nolan holds on.
Yeah, Nolan's looking very good at the places that you want to be quick at turn 1, here at turns 7 and 8 as well.
Oh,
he's looking. Oh, there goes the bumper from Foley, but he's looking very good right where you want to be able to defend well. And at the moment he's capable of holding Foley behind, but I'm not sure how much longer that Volvo is going to be happy sitting behind that Volkswagen at the head of the field as we come onto the main straight yet again.
Yeah, that FCR Volvo certainly looks to be quite a bit quicker than the Volkswagen at the moment. But with these guys racing, they did have a little bit of a gap over Brendan Ross last time out, but now Brendan Ross is right there. Michael Ford's not too far back either.
Yeah, Ford's on for fastest lap of this race.
Goes side by side into one. Oh, it's very risky, but Nolan trying to hold on, but Foley will take the lead for now. Now Ross having a look up the inside. Foley very conservative on the brakes. He's able to pull it up. This might bring Brendan Ross into the game here.
Oh, I'm just getting flashbacks to like 2003 between Scaife and Ambrose here as they try and file too wide through turn 3. Thought better of it and stuck to a single line as Nolan has to go defensive into 4 here, but manages to hold the position. So at the end of the day, Foley takes the lead, Nolan down to second, and Ross, poking his nose in everywhere he can, still remains in third. And all this battling has invited Michael Ford to come up and join them. So now we've got a battle of 4 at the front.
Nolan now having a look at turn 6 again, and I think Foley on the grass as he tried to turn in there, so that cost him a little bit of time. But Nolan now back into the lead, so he couldn't hold it for more than half a lap. But I do believe Foley is the fastest, and it's not only Michael Ford, as Nolan locks up, that's going to allow Foley through. Now, yes, it will allow Ross through, and even Ford
through as well.
It's
not quite.
Behind,
so he's dropped out to third.
And behind them, Ricky Slick's closing in, as is Corey Preston, Mitch Hathaway, and Dwayne Davies.
Yeah, so it's been, as these group at the front continue to battle on, keep in mind the tyres are going to go off as they battle further and further into this race. So we might see the likes of Ricky Slick and Corey Preston, who have been able to sort of sit back and conserve, come into this battle at the end of the race. Just quickly, we've already had 2 retirements. Unfortunately, Zach has dropped out. Oh, sorry, not Zach. Brownie's dropped out, and Hayden Warrington, after his pretty decent start, has also dropped out. Oh, Nolan's off the track. Nolan's off the track at 1.
And a big lockup as well in front, and another lockup as well for Nolan at turn 2. So that's allowed Michael Ford now up into a podium position in the ladder. But there's a big lockup in front. Brenton Foley, we saw on the helicopter cam there, he got a big lockup, but Ross sort of outbroke himself as well into turn 2, and they both sort of fumbled their way through turn 2. But they didn't trade positions, but they certainly lost a bit of time.
I think the one who lost out the most, and that was Nolan, who's now behind Ford. And if this race continues as it is, as he makes a move into 6, not quite.
Looked like he had a little bit of contact between himself, as I see Corey Preston passed Ricky Slick there into turn 6. But I think the lead up to turn 6 is a little bit of light contact between Nolan and Ford. So that's why Nolan's missing his front splitter now.
Oh, and Slick tries to go back down the inside into the hairpin and gets it done. We had someone off in the lead.
That's Steve Burko in the Honda, and he's staying off the track and getting out of the way. So very sensible driving. Hopefully he doesn't. Yeah, he's not getting in the way of anybody there. So considerate driving from Steve Burko.
Sorry, I saw the blue colour and thought that was one of the leaders. Oh,
a very similar colour.
There.
So we'll just have a look and have a look on the replay. So Slick tried to make a very late move into the hairpin, and Preston just turned in on him there. So a little bit naughty. So we might see a bit of return serve later if Ricky Slick gets close enough. But Preston now back up to 5th and chasing down Scott Nolan.
Yeah, so I think out of the top 5 or 6, I think it's Nolan who's struggling most on his tyres. We've seen him lock up 2 or 3 times now under heavy braking, which has allowed a few cars to go past him. So Nolan, I think, will struggle as we approach half-race distance here, the first race of the AMS Oz TCR series. Who do you think has got the best condition of the tyres at this stage of the race?
Well, it's interesting. You could, I wouldn't say Foley, because we've seen him lock up into turn 2 quite a bit, but that's the inside tyre. But he's also been racing people quite hard. Brendan Ross, again, I don't think he's pushed exactly to his maximum, but he's also locked up a couple of times as well. So I reckon the FCR crew probably are in a better position tyre-wise, especially because they've got quite a lot of experience with these physics and tyres. So I think they're probably at a slight advantage, but we haven't seen Michael Ford exactly push too hard in his Lada either. While we're seeing Preston sort of had a couple half spins, and we've seen Nolan as well lock up and push his Volkswagen pretty hard as well. So I reckon Michael Ford's probably got some decent tyres as well, but I think we'll see in the next 5 minutes or so who has the better tyres, because that's when we'll see the lap times really start to drop off a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking as well. Ford's been able to just sort of sit there and let the trio ahead of him battle it out and take advantage when he can, but he's shedding a bit of time to the guys ahead of him. He's 2.2 seconds down as they cross the line to start lap 9 here. The two Volvos have just managed to step away now that they're together and without any
Foley
interruption.
wide at the exit of turn 1, and Ross is going to have a look, but not quite close enough. But yeah, on that last lap, both the leading cars, they're the only drivers in the 35. So 35.7 for Foley, 35.5 for Ross, and then we had Michael Ford at 36.2 and a 36.0 for Scott Nolan, and a 36.5 for Corey Preston.
Yeah, so I think the FCR guys now are just in race management mode. They know that they don't necessarily need to push too far. They've built up a gap now of about 2 seconds, which is a very nice, healthy buffer in a series like this, as Ross just runs it nice and gently wide at turn 5 and doing everything they can to protect that front right tyre, which is the working tyre around here.
Well, I think knowing how FCR work as well, I think they'll probably be told, at least for the next couple minutes, just to build a little bit of a lead and get away from the cars behind them, because when you are battling, that's when you do lose a lot of time. And if they do battle and fall into the clutches of the other cars, that could ruin what could be a 1-2. So I think we might see them just not so much race themselves, but certainly pace themselves just a little bit. And Ross will probably just sit back for the next couple laps, and they'll try and just eke away from what will be a little battle for third place between Ford, Nolan and Preston, and possibly even Dwayne Davies, who is closing in. Dwayne Davies now ahead of Ricky Slick, so Davies is on the move and driving quite nicely and recovering. So he's now back to where he started, but it's taken him 15 minutes to get back there.
Have we lost Foley just quickly? No. Okay, I'm just looking at the timing screen and Foley just dropped off and it freaked me out a little bit. Something must have happened to Ricky Slick in that middle sector because he lost about 3 or 4 seconds. So that's probably where Dwayne Davies got that advantage. But yeah, it's turning into a bit of a split there between the top 7 and then Hathaway, which is in 8th. And then there's a little battle between Turmo and Thomas Paul, which rounds out the top 10. Everyone's sort of found a little bit of their own space at the moment, and so this is sort of a little bit of a management period that we're going through.
Yeah, we've got Turmo and Paul, closest battle on track at the moment. Turmo did get past Paul a couple of laps ago and probably did look to be the faster of the drivers, but Turmo must have made a mistake somewhere and allowed Paul back into it. But we'll just run through the field actually. So we've got Turmo very, very wide, and that's probably going to allow Paul through into turn 6. So we'll just stick with this for a moment. No, Turmo will hold on for now, but coming into no, he will hold on. So Turmo is in 9th, and we've got Paul in 10th, And then Steve Bolger in the Alfa Romeo. He's in 11th. He's got a bit of a battle pack behind him. So he's got Luke Joyner behind him. Netherrealmian in 13th. And then Cracker not too far away either. So there's a nice little 4-car battle pack. Then a bit of a gap between Cracker and Lyle Mitch. Lyle Mitch was in the top 10, but contact between himself and Ricky Slick at that very hairpin right there has dropped him well down the field. Thankfully, it doesn't look like his car's damaged, but that's been certainly sent him well down the field. We've got Gary Neville in 16th. We've got Zach in 17th. Very, very late join. I don't know how much practice he's done, considering I don't think he and Burko had the right circuit, so that's still decent effort. He's out there and he's not a lap down, so he's doing okay. He's down in 17th. They've got Brian Walsh in 18th for Playboy Racing. And they've got Matt Cecil in 19th. Steve Burko a lap down in 20th. Glenn Miles in 21st. And then we've got Brownie and Warrington as the 2 retirements.
Just while you're doing that run through the field, Foley's actually eked out about a second lead over Brendan Ross. There was a slow middle sector for Brendan Ross last time around, which is why that gap is now opened up. And the gap between Ford and Nolan's actually closed up quite a bit. Nolan making some significant inroads to that gap now that sits at only half a second as we approach 7.5 minutes remaining in this first race of the season.
Yeah, so certainly on the last lap, because going by the first sector, there wasn't really much between them on this lap. And behind them, Corey Preston's been closed down by Dwayne Davies. So I don't think Corey Preston's used his tyres too much. And Dwayne Davies, he's coming on strong as the race goes on. We could see him... Sorry, no, Davies was in 5th place, so perhaps he's lost out to Corey
It was Ricky
Preston.
Slick that you were thinking of. And Ricky Slick's actually dropped further back. He's in the clutches now of Mitchell Hathaway in that Audi Sport Tanda liveried car.
Yeah, he did have an off. We caught it in the background of one of the shots that he had an off at I think it was turn 3. Yeah, turn 4. Sorry, on the exit of turn 4 and between turn 5. So that's why he's dropped back a little bit. His first sector wasn't great either. So, from what I've been told from FCR, he's not a particular fan of the extra power these cars have, and uses his tyres a bit more, and that's why. See him as he locks up into turn 2 and very, very wide, and that's going to allow Hathaway to get alongside. So he's not a big fan of the extra power and what it does to the tyres, so we'll probably see him throughout the season probably lose out as the races go on, but he's doing a good effort though, still in 7th place. And up ahead, Dwayne Davies.
Yeah, just made that move on Corey Preston. Corey Preston ran a little wide out of turn 3, I think, and then Davies was just all over him as they came into turn 4 and made the move, and yeah, executed perfectly. So now Davies up to 5th. Corey Preston looking like he's struggling a little bit in 6th. In fact, last time around, the top 4 cars were all top 5 cars, all in the 36s. Corey Preston 37.2, so he's struggling as we approach the latter stages of this race.
Well, when we'll have a look at that little replay of Davies getting past Preston there, you could see just how much lock Preston was applying, and that's certainly not going to help the front tyres. And I think that's probably why his lap times are starting to start to fall off a cliff, because he's using a lot of lock, he's probably just using a lot more power as well instead of using the throttle to modulate the steering, and that's probably why his lap times are going down, and that's why obviously he ran wide and allowed Davies back up to P5.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you kind of fall into a trap with the front wheel drive cars, because you've got all the power at the front of the car. When you start to push that down, it starts to understeer. So you want to try and modulate the throttle to bring the rear around, but it doesn't want to do it in the way that you expect. So yeah, as you see, the cars that have been super smooth and have been out in their own space, like Ross and like Foley, are still maintaining that 56 lap time. But as you go further down the field, the times just drop off more and more.
We've got Hathaway having a look at Ricky Slick. Slick running wide in the exit of turn 2, and said last lap that he really struggles applying the power and uses up a lot.
Big twitch there in the middle of turn 5, and it's opened the door, but Hathaway wasn't really close enough to make a move out of it there. So I think he's just biding his time here, waiting for a good opportunity, but that was a good opportunity there and he didn't take it.
Well, perhaps he's just, as you said, just biding his time, because there's still 4.5 minutes plus that extra lap. And with the way Ricky Slick's been driving, he's probably just waiting for that golden opportunity to make the easy move as opposed to forcing it. Because he's not really going. He's got 6 seconds to Corey Preston in front. He's not really going to catch him. So forcing a move, probably not worth it in the end. Wait for a lap or two and see if Slick makes that really big error, and then he can get that position much, much easier.
Well, you certainly have more patience than I would at the seat of one of these cars.
That's how I see it. Behind them, still the battle between Turmo and Thomas Paul continues to rage. Thomas Paul right behind Turmo now. Turmo missing his front splitter, so he's had a little bit of contact somewhere. And Paul having a look up the inside of turn 1, side by side.
Ooh, hold your breath, everyone.
And Turmo isn't going to run wide, so that's good. And they're going to go side by side now up into turn 2. And it looks like Slick and Hathaway also side by side. And we had Foley go off, I think, because he's disappeared.
Yeah, he's dropped down to 6. Oh, what's happened there?
That is disastrous. So in the lead, I think it must be an internet issue. It must be, because he's actually reappeared in 8th place. But
he's still dropping. He's still dropping. So he's not actually lost any time. He's still first on track. But
I think that'll fix itself when he crosses the line. I think there's just a timing glitch and a little bit of lag, but once he crosses the line, it'll put him back first because he's still out on track and he's in the service. So, yep, so there we go. It has fixed. Behind that, though, Brendan Ross has made an error somewhere because he's now in the clutches of Michael Ford. And he was only 1.3 behind of Brenton Foley.
Yeah, so it's that battle between Ford and Nolan's been brewing for a little while, and they've slowly brought themselves up, and it's a slow middle sector, 39-second middle sector for Brendan Ross, which has seen him lose all that time to the leader. So he might be beginning to struggle a little bit as we approach 2 minutes and 20 seconds left in this race.
And the battle we were looking at before Foley had that little internet problem drop him down through the field, well, appeared on the timing board anyway. Thomas Paul has got past Turmo after all that. Running side by side at turn 1, turn 2. But Turmo isn't letting him get away. And behind them, Netherrealmian, he's got himself in front of Luke Joyner. And looks like Steve Bolger, who was ahead of in that pack there. Looks like Bolger's made a mistake somewhere.
I think that that battle between Paul and Turmo's just might have gone off the boil a little bit as Turmo tried to dive down the inside. He went a little wide, but he's actually managed to get a good exit out of turn 2 and hold on to the rear of Thomas Paul as they go into turn 4, almost side by side yet again. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. Another one to keep an eye on is this everlasting Hathaway and Ricky Slick battle. And then at the top of the field, Michael Ford is right on the rear of Brendan Ross. So as we approach, well, maybe 2 laps left in this race, there's plenty going on through the field.
Yeah, certainly a couple battles we can choose from. We've also got Corey Preston now. He's closed onto the back of Dwayne Davies. So I don't think Dwayne Davies had a good middle sector. We'll just have a look on his live races updates. 39.0 compared to a 38.7. And Preston is also a 10th fast in the middle sector as well. So he's just closed that gap up as well. So we've got a number of tasty battles. Michael Ford right behind Brendan Ross now. Foley's 3.5 seconds adrift. So barring mistake or an unfortunate error or internet problem, Foley will probably take this one. But 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th all really up for grabs as
Ford dives. Ford dives towards the inside. Ross went just a little wide and held the door open. Now he's gone off the track at 3.
And he's got a penalty, drive-through penalty. So he's picked up a couple track cuts. And unfortunately for him, that's going to be 25 seconds added to his time unless he serves the drive-through on this lap.
Wow.
So it will be faster, actually, if he does just serve the drive-through. So it will be faster than 25 seconds if he just serves it, I believe. So
that's brutal on him because he was not forced off the track there, but he didn't really have anywhere else he could go. And to pick up a penalty on something like that, that's... Oh, if I was him, I'd be arguing with the stewards for this one.
I think it's just was a bit unlucky, but unfortunately that's Automobilista sometimes. It's very, very strict. But we did see these little errors from Brendan Ross in TCC where he just overdrive a little bit, use all the limits and go over them. And unfortunately he's done it one too many times this time out, and he's done it right at where you don't want to, right at the end. And that's going to cost him a podium. Obviously it's elevated Michael Ford. will elevate Michael Ford, and will elevate Scott Nolan, Dwayne Davies, and Corey Preston, as well as probably Ricky Slick and Hathaway, who continue to battle it out. We'll probably stick with them for this final lap. So the next lap will be the final lap, 17 laps. And Ricky Slick doing all he can do to hold on to P7. Behind them,
so now
Paul and Turbo duking it out.
Remember what you were saying earlier about not trying to force a move? What do you reckon Hathaway's going to be thinking about that now?
Well, now is where you got to force it, and he's having a look at turn 1, but decides against it, and that is, I do believe we saw a flash of Brendan Ross. So Brendan Ross has served his drive-through, and that'll be much better for him points-wise. And
there's a touch between Slick and Hathaway. Yes. Hathaway's gone straight into the back of Slick in turn 2.
And that's going to hurt Hathaway the most, because that's going to allow Ross straight back past. So he did go for it, but he wasn't up the inside. I think he might have just outbroke himself. He wasn't trying to make a move. Outbroke himself, gave Slick a tap, which forced him wide. But that's allowed Ross through, and now there's a car between the two of them.
I wonder if Hathaway expected Ricky Slick to close the door and then got surprised when he didn't. Because I would have thought that Hathaway was close enough to actually make that move, but he never actually thought.
Preston and Davies up ahead. Sorry to cut you off. Preston trying to make a move into the hairpin. Davies has run a little bit wide on the exit, but Davies should have the run coming into the final 2 turns. So barring mistake, he should get that one. Foley's coming around the final corner, as is Ford and now Nolan. And looks like Davies will get the run out of the corner. But anyway, Brenton Foley will take the inaugural race win at TCR Oz. About 4 seconds in front of Michael Ford and Scott Nolan in 3rd place. Dwayne Davies did it the hard way, but got himself back up to P4 in the end. Corey Preston will be kicking himself, making that mistake early on, dropping him down to 6th or 7th place. He finishes in 5th place. Ricky Slick will hold on for 6th place. Brendan Ross 7th. Mitchell Hathaway 8th. Then we've got Thomas Paul. He was finished out on top of his battle between himself and Turmo, who will finish in 10th place. And then we've got Netherelmian, followed by Luke Joyner and Cracker about to cross the start-finish line. So they had a nice battle all race long.
And Steve Bolger, who was the cork in that battle, has actually dropped out to 14th. So he comes across the line 14th. Gary Neville in the last of the FCR cars in 15th. Then it's Zach in the Honda down in 16th. Lime Mitch is going across the line in 17th as he's just exiting the last corner now. Remember, Lime Mitch was in a pretty good position before he got a tag from Ricky Slick. So there might still be some more stories at the end of this race. It might not be completely over, but you got to say, what a drive from Brendan Foley to just control the race once he got the lead, and he never looked like losing. In fact, that last lap was the only lap of his that was outside the 1 minute 36s. It was a 37.040. So unbelievable consistency from Foley at the head of the field.
Well, I think it's just something that is just continuing on from the TCC series, where he was, for the most part, he was a step above the competition, just consistency-wise and pace-wise. And as you said there, just incredible consistency. Only 1 lap outside a 1 minute 36, and that was the last lap of the race where he had a gap and was just taking it easy. So, once again, he continues his winning ways in a touring car. But got to say, there's still quite a number of drivers that do have the pace there, but I think it's just about putting the overall complete package together that will separate, obviously, Brenton Foley from, well, will separate any driver from winning, because as we've seen, Foley's put the gauntlet down. He's very, very good pace-wise, and he doesn't make many mistakes either. So you're going to have to be on your game to fight with him in the championship.
Yeah, and with the way that he drove today, you not only going to have to be good at fighting with him, but you're also going to have to be smooth to keep up with him as he used the tyres very, very nicely. Another drive I was pretty impressed with in the end was Dwayne Davies. What a recovery from him towards the end of the race. Yeah,
obviously didn't have the greatest of first laps. It was down 5 or 6 spots and quite a bit of time in the early part of that race. And he didn't really force his way through the field. He was nice and patient. And he didn't obviously overwork his tyres because he had quite decent pace towards the end of that race. He might have had the odd little mistake when battling with Corey Preston, but I think that's going to be the story of a lot of the seasons when you're battling. You're going to see these little micro mistakes, which do cost you a little bit of time. But in the end, to recover to where he did, fantastic effort and great fight back. And I think if he gets a good start, he'll be one to look out for. As we did see, he was within the 2/10 bracket in qualifying in that top sort of 6 and 7 drivers there.
Yeah, and yeah, this is the only the first race of the series, so there's plenty of racing still to come. But ominous signs from Brenton Foley already with such a standout performance in the first race. Just to tie off one of the loose ends we had from that race, Ricky Slick did just post in the game chat an apology to Lime Mitch about his that little incident between the two of them. So story might not be over, but at least it's not quite the how do I put this? Angsty ending that that it might have been between those two drivers.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those ones where sometimes you're just really, really close to a driver in front, and you make that decision to make a move, and they're both up the inside there. The car in front breaks just that little bit earlier because you're so close. There's no time to react or get out of the way, and unfortunately that's just caused the contact and sent Lime Mitch off into the boonies on the left-hand side of that hairpin there. But Lime Mitch was sort of near that Netherrealmian and Cracker sort of battle there. But he must have made another mistake towards the end of that race. Because, yeah, he was near that battle, but he ended up being a couple spots further down the pack. So possibly another mistake or another incident which dropped him a little bit further down.
Just quickly, we've actually got Scott Nolan in the booth with us. Scott, great race, great result. I think it was third from you in the end. Congratulations.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you very much. Yeah, pretty happy with that. I'm pretty surprised, to be honest. Didn't really have any expectations going into this. I knew there was a lot of quick guys here that I haven't really raced against too much lately. So, yeah, and I saw that FCR were pretty good on the testing, so I thought they'd be pretty quick, and they were. And the goal was, I got in the lead, and the goal was just to keep them guys behind as long as I can and make them make the pass. And unfortunately, I sort of got to kick myself because I made 2 mistakes and let them and 40 through. And yeah, that was it, really. I was just trying to keep in touch with them, but pretty happy that they didn't kick too far away. But yeah, those guys have got a lot of speed.
Yeah, one of the things we noticed is that the consistency from the guys at the head of the field was immense. I think Foley only set 1 lap outside of 36 for the entire race. What can you do to try and bridge that gap as we go throughout the season?
Not sure. Look, new cars, I've never really touched anything like this. I'm not a massive fan of front wheel drive either. So I usually don't go too well in front wheel drive. So again, another good point that I'm surprised myself. But I felt I really struggled for front end compared to those guys, and I just felt like they were so much better through turn 1 and the last turn as well. And I think that really affected straight line down the straight through the last turn. I couldn't catch him even with draft, even 40 as well. So I've really got to work on that. I think I need to just smarten up the front of the car a bit. The rest of the lap, I felt like I could match him or better him. So yeah, we'll go do a debrief and have a look and see how we can smarten that up for race 2.
Yeah, race 2, reverse grid race. I think if my maths is correct, with 2 non-finishers, you'll be starting from 18th. So how do you go about plowing through the field with a reverse grid race?
Oh, I think you just got to be smart. I think some of the guys will really trip themselves up by trying to dive bomb or trying to get through on the first lap. Like, yeah, you want to try and make as much ground as you can on the opening lap and get through a few of the guys. But you got to remember that the guys just ahead of you are the guys that finish just behind you, so they've got similar speed. So yeah, I'll just be trying to pick them off one at a time and see where we end up. I sort of, again, got no expectation. As long as we finish and we score good points, and that's about it. I've sort of gone into this series as a bit of fun on a Monday night, and I just flick some buttons and see how we go, and that's about it. So, yeah, we'll give it a crack and see where we end up.
Fantastic. Yeah, congratulations again for your 3rd place in race 1, and good luck for race 2.
Yeah, cheers. Just a big shout out to Hobbo for my non-paint. That'll be coming soon. He's a very busy man, but yeah, look to get some stickers on the car and make it look as good as we always do. So that'll be ready to go round 5.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Scott. So yeah, reverse grid in race 2. I think we had, 21 finishes. So the top 21 will be reversed, and then the remaining positions stay the same. Is that how that works? Or you just straight up don't get an entry if you DNF race 1?
No, if you DNF, you just start from where you DNF. So if you were the first driver to DNF, say in this field, because there's 22 cars, you'd start 22nd. So
Yep.
in this case, Hayden Warrington will be starting in the final position, and then there'll be Brownie a position above him.
Yep. And we've also, it looks like we've picked up an extra driver. It looks like Mike Coulston's actually jumped into the booth, or sorry, into the room, into the server, potato, tomato, whatever. And he is driving a
Alfa
Romeo.
Yep. I think it's very similar to who drives it in TCR Oz. I can't remember. It's white with the Italian sort of flag on the front of it.
It's. I know this. I follow this team because they drive the Alfa Romeos. Oh my god, what have I done? I can't remember. Damn it.
But well, you continue to talk stuff. I've got to just sort through this reverse grid. So if you could just fill time, unless you want to go to a break, we could go to a couple minute break and then come back.
I think going to a break would be a good thing, because I need to get another glass of water.
All right. Well, guys, we'll probably have a good 10 or so minutes until race, 10, 15 minutes until race 2. But we shall be back in a little while. Stick around.
I hope you didn't mind the impromptu interview. I figured it would give you some time, and you told me not to if we had to move.
Yeah, look, if someone jumps in like in between races when I'm doing reverse grid, especially with such a big field, then yeah, go nuts.
Beautiful.
I just come in to listen because it gets boring sitting here by myself.
All right, and welcome back. Do apologise for the lengthy break. There being 23 cars in the server, takes quite a while to sort out the reverse grid. But got about a minute until the warm-up session between races 1 and 2 finishes, and race 2 is underway. But race 1, certainly an entertaining one, and hopefully the reverse grid race hopefully doesn't have too much carnage for starters, but hopefully it contains some more great racing.
I'm actually really interested to see how tyre management will go with this reverse grid race, because obviously for the guys now at the back of the field, the Foleys, the Brendan Rosses, the Ricky Slicks, those guys, they're going to have to be making the moves through the field, which is going to be using up their tyres. But there's got to be a point of diminishing returns, right? There's got to be a point where the quality of the guys ahead matches the quality of the guys behind with the tyres that they've had to use up. So I think maybe someone like a Lime Mitch, who had a shocking first race, but will be placed higher up the grid, might be one for a race win in this sort of format.
Well, Lime Mitch did have a decent amount of pace, so he is at a very, very good position. He will be starting, for those that don't know, he will be starting in 5th place. So he'll be one to look out for, but I think I've seen too many of these reverse grid races where Brenton Foley started at the back. Obviously, it's going to be a bit more difficult because normally there's only about 15 or so cars in the field for him to get through. But I've just seen too many races with Brenton Foley in these reverse grid races just storm through the field and make up a bunch of spots on the first lap and come through and win these reverse races. So he'll be one. He's one to definitely look out for. His racecraft and spatial awareness is second to none, and he knows when to make a move. So look out for him. But and Lime Mitch, obviously Lime Mitch in great position, but it's just going to be about consistency with him. For Mitch to win the race, it's all about the first probably 4 laps. If he can get himself into the lead, build a little bit of a lead over everybody else, he'll give himself every opportunity to win it. If he sort of fumbles around a little bit and the field's close to him when the front runners start getting to him, I think he's in a bit of trouble.
Or it would certainly be interesting as the cars start to make their way towards the grid for the reverse grid race, second race of AMS Oz TCR Championship. This will be. I'm pretty excited for this. I haven't actually done a reverse grid race with AMS yet, so I'm keen to have a look at this.
Well, with in TCC with the rolling starts, we had some big incidents and some interesting moments. With a standing start, hopefully it shouldn't be quite as bad. But I'm
not too worried about the start. I'm more worried about what happens at turn 2 or turn 8. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I think we'll certainly see a bit of interesting maneuvers. It's all about, obviously, you've got the big differences at the front and the back in terms of lap time, but there's also confidence there as well. Sometimes you get the slower guys at the front just being a bit more cautious and taking it easy, and then you get the faster guys and some of the guys in the middle that are really, really aggressive, and you mix those two together, and that's where, well, you could say that's where the fireworks start happening, but but that's certainly one to look out for. Anyway, the formation lap is underway. Michael, why don't you lead us through the grid once again?
No problems, Lewis. We've got Glenn Miles off pole position in the Playboy Racing Ford Focus. Next to him is Steve Burko in the Honda, then Matt Cecil in that all-black Alfa Romeo. Then we've got Brian Walsh in the other Playboy Racing Fords. Then Lime Mitch in that BMW. Then the first, looks like we've got Zach in the Dragon Racing car in 6th. They're just not in order on the grid, which is why I got me confused. Gary Neville in the FCR Volvo. Then Steve Bolger in the second of the Alfa Romeos. Cracker in the black, I think that's the Seat, which looks pretty sick.
Yep, the Seat Cupra. Or Cupra.
Nice. Luke Joyner in the MHRT Astra with the Holden Racing Team motif on the side. Netherrealmian in the Ford Focus Turmo. Then Thomas Paul. Now we're getting into some of the heavy hitters. Mitchell Hathaway from 14th. Next up is Brendan Ross from 15th. He's in a pretty good position ahead of the likes of Ricky Slick in 16th. Corey Preston 17th. He's going to have to work on his tyre management a bit more this race compared to the last one. Dwayne Davies in 8th. And then the top 3 from last race, Scott Nolan, Brenton Foley, And we've lost Love. Ford from this race, haven't we? Michael Ford. Whereabouts is he?
Well, he had left the server a couple times throughout the warm-up, so unfortunately he's dropped out. He must have left the server again, so unfortunately for him, he's going to miss the second race.
And then bring up the tail of the field, we have the DNF from last race in Brownie. Looks like Warrington hasn't made the second race, and we've actually picked up another racer in Mike Coulston in the flat spot racing Alfa Romeo that looks a bit like Dylan O'Keefe's Alfa Romeo. I got there in the end.
Yeah, it's another one that Termo's painted a number of livers. He painted all the Audis, and he painted Mike Coulston's flat spot racing Alfa Romeo there. But yeah, certainly going to be an interesting second race, and we do have a long shot from all the way down at turn 1, so we will see how the guys at the back get away from the start. Obviously, do remember Gary Neville did jump the start as well, so that's why he was down the field. So he had actually an alright drive where he ended up picking up a few spots there, but he'll be hoping not to jump at this time. But anyway, 2 lights, 3, 4, 5. Away we go. Gary Neville very cautious this time. In fact, he's forced Cracker to go wide, and looks like Cecil's got a decent start. He's having a look up the inside, but it will be Burko into the lead. Lime Mitch already up into P2, so he's got the start he desperately needed if he wants to claim win. It looks like there's a bit of contact at turn 1 there.
It looks like Nether's been involved as well, as there's a huge dive for third from, I think that was Brian Walsh. He's going to lose out to Zach, who comes back on the inside. But there was certainly some argy-bargy in the middle of the field between, I think it was Nether and Termo, as they all filed through turn 1.
Yeah, so actually, Lime Mitch now in the lead, so he's ahead of Burko. And then looks like Steve Bolger making a move up past one of the Ford Focuses, past Brian Walsh there. And Cracker, he's had a decent start. He's up 3 spots, and looks like one of the yellow Fords here at the back. I don't know if it was, I think it was Nether there on the grass at turn 4 on the inside. We've got a slow car on the inside. Looks like that's Glenn Myers. A bit of contact between Brownie and someone. Ooh, so Brownie's off in the barrier, and it's got a bit of a ding on the right hand side of his car. But Glenn Myers looked like he may even just letting the whole field go, but sort of balking a couple people there.
Just quickly, you're never going to believe this. Foley up to 11th, and Brendan Ross 10th place as they file through the hairpin on the first lap. So already massive inroads into the top half of the field in this first part of the race.
Well, you might not believe it, but I certainly do. Seen it enough times, and they've done it once again. And Foley up the inside of Ross, as Ross ran wide at the final corner there. So Foley now up to 10th, and Ross down to 11th. And a little bit of contact between Scott Nolan and Ricky Slick. So there goes the front splitter of the Volkswagen. A bit of contact between Nolan and Preston, as Preston tries to force his way to the inside there. So I don't think Nolan will be too happy with that. Nolan having a look up the inside of Preston, who gets it sideways but holds onto it, gets on the throttle and holds it. And now it looks like Hathaway having a look up the inside of Nolan, who moves to the inside. Preston trying to make a big move, and big contact between himself and Slick.
Ooh,
Slick's not going to be happy with that, and Slick just moving across saying, you're not getting that position now. And out of all that, Netherrealmian's moved up a spot, and Hathaway also a big gainer. He's up 3 spots from that little bit of contact, and he's now right behind Ross, who's now missing a front splitter as well.
Yeah, all that argy-bargy further down the field has given the likes of Ross and Foley, who have escaped all that, and even the likes of Luke Joyner as well, a big sort of free kick. Because those guys, after that little bit of a ruckus, have actually dropped something like 10 seconds over these guys who have gotten out ahead. But at the head of the field, it is Lime Mitch. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't. I was just coughing, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Well, yeah, at the front of the field, Lime Mitch, already a 3-second gap over the rest of the field as the battle for second between Steve Burko and Zach heats up going into this last complex of corners. And by the looks of it, Zach's got a decent amount of pace behind him, and he's all over the back of Steve Burko as they come onto the main straight.
And Steve Bolger not too far away. And they've got a little bit of a gap behind them to Gary Neville and Cracker, who's got Brenton Foley now up 14 spots into 7th place.
Madness.
And Ross not far away either. Ross looking like he's going to try and set up a move into turn 1 over Luke Joyner. He's right in the slipstream of the Holden Astra, not the Opel. And Ross gives...
Oh, someone's off ahead.
Oh, that's Cracker. That's
a massive moment.
That's a big one.
He's gone straight through the gravel trap, and he's made the contact with the wall on the outside. So that's a huge off for Cracker there.
It's just,
do we have safety cars in this series?
We don't have safety. Well, that may be a feature in the future, but at the moment, currently not. But we will have a look and see what's happened here. So it looks like it's on his own. He's just lost the rear. Oh, he's overcorrected it. So there's no one near him. He just overcorrected it instead of just gassing it up. And that's him in the barrier. And unfortunately, that's him out of the race. So maybe that accident actually wrecked his, broke his engine and got Matt Cecil in the pits as well. And Lime Mitch, 5.6 seconds in front of Steve Burko in the lead. Burko's now got Bolger right behind him.
And then just behind that is Brendan Foley. So the thing I was about to say is the important thing isn't so much the gap over Steve Burko, it's the gap to Foley, and that is only about 7 or so seconds as Foley makes a move for third on, was that Scott Bolger there? Steve Bolger.
Steve Bolger.
Get that one wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Zach's dropped a couple spots as well, because Zach was right with Burko. Burko's downshifted, he's blown the engine, he's barbecued it, so he's just downshifted. Tried to slam down the gears to slow it down at the final corner, and that's his day done. And get the sausages and marshmallows out, because that's a nice little fire coming out of that engine.
But what that does mean now is that it is Lime Mitch with a 5-second gap to Brendan Foley. 2 laps into the race, 3 laps into that's some amazing work from Foley to process the field that quickly.
And he does it without really he doesn't make contact with drivers either. He doesn't throw drivers under the bus like we do sometimes see with other drivers that are trying to force their way through the field. He's just able to get through it's hot knife through butter. It is you look it up in the dictionary and there's a photo of an FCR car and Brendan Foley at the wheel. And even though he did have to get past a couple of cars on that last lap, he was still 0.3 faster and set the fastest lap of the race. So he's flying and 0.7 up on Lime Mitch in the first sector alone already.
It's ridiculous. And of those guys who would have been around Foley at the start of the race, who started that far back, Brendan Ross made up 10 spots to from 15th. And then it's Hathaway in 9th, Davies in 8th, and Nolan in 11th, the next group of those guys. So he's really just put everyone to the sword at the first part of this race, and coming out trumps.
Oh, and there's just see a little battle between Joyner and Slick. Slick sending it up the inside, that little fast kink at turn 7. And then at the hairpin, Luke Joyner's just gone straight around the outside. So fantastic move from Luke Joyner to regain that position. Just in front of them is Zach and Brendan Ross battling out, and then there's Steve Bolger. He's got a bit of a Bolger train in front of him at the moment. As you can see, a very, very angry pack. All the way down to Corey, Preston. A little bit of a gap between Preston and Netherelmy, and then we've got Mike Coulston, and then a bit of a gap to Brian Walsh.
Ricky Slick. Oh, Ricky Slick pulled out to make the move on Luke Joyner just as they were going through turn 1. I don't know if there was contact. And Preston's sideways on the exit of turn 1 too. Oh, mad stuff here. So Slick pulled out to make a move. I don't know if there was contact or not, but all of a sudden Joyner was sideways. Slick made the move, and Joyner's dropped down 3 spaces and 2 corners.
Unfortunate for Joyner there, but he's still... We have seen
alive.
When he's still alive, and what we've seen with Joyner is look out for him in the second races, because normally he doesn't get time to get too much practice in, and he'll be sort of nowhere in the first race, but it comes set the second race, he generally picks up a little bit of speed, so he's not going to be one that's going to be difficult, it's not going to be one that's going to be easy to sort of get past or drop.
Just quickly, Foley check. He's now only 4 seconds behind Lime Mitch, the head of the field. Set the fastest lap last time around at 36.1 compared to a 37.3 from Lime Mitch. So big difference there. Expect that one to be wrapped up pretty quickly as I'm looking at this battle between Steve Bolger and the rest as they all come through turn 8 into that last little section of the track.
It's a very, very angry battle pack. Another thing to take into consideration is that the rubber that was put down in practice in the first race, it's no longer there. So the track isn't as rubbered up. That's why the lap times aren't as quick. But I think as the race goes on, probably the middle point of the race, we'll probably see the drivers that still have a little bit of tyres left and the track rubbered up. That's when we'll see the fastest lap times. But towards the end of those times, probably will sort of drop off a little bit.
Zach's on the inside of Steve Bolger as they go through into turn 1. He makes that move stick very nicely. He got all of it done before the corner even starts. And just ahead of him was that Ross, who just went a little wide.
Bit wide, but now we've got Slick trying to make the move up the inside of Bolger. and Slick give each other room. And
Someone's
Foley
gone
will
well
take
off in
that
the
position.
background. That was Hathaway who's gone off in the background, but he dropped down now to 10th.
Looks like Luke Joyner also a bit wide there at turn 2. It's just amazing. You see, obviously Corey Preston was up the front end of the field and in the reverse, grid race starts at the back. You've got Foley there, second place, and just for comparison, you've got Corey Preston in 11th, and he's 9 seconds adrift of Brenton Foley in 6 laps. So that's the difference between someone who can just get through the field, relative ease, and someone that's just struggling at the moment.
Yeah, and we might see that accentuated through the... Maybe not accentuated, because if the grids drop off, it is, of course, going to be easier. They go 3 wide through the hairpin. What is this? We've got Bolger, Slick, and Zach as Gary Neville and Brendan Ross battling it out for third. This is mad stuff.
Nolan and Bolger side by side at the final corner, and then they've got Dwayne Davies all 3 wide on the exit. And, that's a bit naughty from Nolan there. And didn't give space to Bolger, who was on the circuit.
Oh, and Slick's gone wide out of all that as well at the back of it, and he's going to drop down to 11th, I think. Yeah, just ahead of Nether, who's going to make the move down the straight. Now, Bolger's got the inside line against Nolan as they come through to turn 1. He's going to be able to hold it there as they go into the corner. They're going to go side by side.
Cigarette paper between them, and Hathaway closing in as well. And they're probably going to go 3 wide now, 4 wide even. Yep, 4 wide. Now 3 wide as Preston does pull out. Hathaway sends it up the inside. Bit of a lock-up contact between Nolan and Preston. And Dwayne Davies says, yeah, I'll take that. I'll take Bolger's spot as well. And more contact
Hathaway's
between...
on the inside of Preston. Dwayne's on the inside of Preston too. They're going to go 3 wide to turn 3.
Oh, and Davies gets through. He somehow squeezed his car through there and is able to pick up another couple spots.
Wow, what mad racing that was.
Oh, we've got a car off in the back. I think that's Zach.
Preston...
No, it's not Zach. It's... Ricky Slick, I believe, is gone off in the back there, so something's happened. It's just a little quick replay. So Slick had got himself back up past Nolan and behind Nether after that, but he got sent off the road somehow at turn 4. So what's happened to him? Oh, he's just outbroke himself, and off in the boonies he goes, and he rejoins in 14th, but back live, and this angry battle pack continues. Zach's broken away from it.
While you were checking that out, Davies had a dive at Preston, who repelled him, and then Hathaway had a dive at Davies. Everyone else just kind of went to hell in a handbasket in the background, as we've got Nether on the inside of Scott Nolan.
Davies very wide. He's going to lose position to Hathaway, and he probably will lose position to Bolger as well. And he'll probably come under attack from Nolan, as well as Foley, fast lap of the race, 36.1.
Just to check on Foley, yeah, 1.8 seconds the gap now at the front, so that's coming down in bits and pieces, but it's still coming down every single lap.
And 1.4 seconds off the lead now. Brendan Ross, he's 6.5 seconds off Brenton Foley, and 1.3 in front of stablemate Gary Neville, who's ahead of Zach. Zach's got a little bit of a gap over Preston, who's got a little bit of a gap over Preston, and then we've got this angry battle pack that just continues to rage. There's no other word for it.
Touch in the middle there. So we had, I think it was Bolger, Nether, and then Joyner, and now Coulston's in the mix as well. They tried to go 3 wide through 3, and it doesn't work, and there was cars sideways, panels coming off, crazy stuff.
Continue to battle it out. Now they're just in front of them, Joyner and Coulston trying to get in. They've been side by side for half a lap now. Coulston they are going to go 3 wide. I thought Joyner's going to be a bit more conservative, but obviously not. It's status quo for now. They're sort of falling away a little bit from Bolger, and between Bolger and Nolan, a little bit of a gap. And Davies now trying to get back past Hathaway after his mistake at the final turn.
But then at the same time, having to keep Scott Nolan behind him, he's looking very dangerous. It's all kind of a bit of give and take here. Sometimes one corner you can be attacking, the next you're defending from the car behind us. Dwayne Davies gets sideways over the curb, and he's gone wide in the last corner, and that opens the door for Nolan to make the move. Yeah, now the drag race starts, and it looks like Nolan's going to have the upper hand.
Yeah, but Davies is going to have the slipstream.
But Nolan's got the slipstream as well. They've still got Hathaway directly ahead of them, but it's tiny gap as they come across the line.
Davies is going to try and go around the outside. Got a little bit of a touch from Nolan there, and that's why he lost it there, trying to turn in. So good driving from Davies to hold on. And as you can see, not too happy being forced onto the grass there. It's thankfully not off the road. Hathaway wide, he's locked up at turn 2, and that's going to invite and wide again, and that'll allow both cars through. So,
Oh, that's a costly mistake from Hathaway there.
Yeah, very costly. So down 2 spots, and that might just free things up for Nolan and Davies. They're not going to be corking the bottle, and they'll be able to get back after Preston and Zach is further down the road. Back at the front though, Brenton Foley has caught Lime Mitch.
Yeah, it's only 7/10 of a second now. We are just over a half race distance as well. So it was a fair time coming, but a very well measured time coming from Brendan Foley, as he's now only half a second as they go into the last section of corners. Honestly, got to say, Lime Mitch has done a pretty impressive job.
Bit of a mistake at the final corners, you say that, and that's
classic commentators.
Classic. But he's going to have a slightly better run, but he's going to punch a nice BMW-sized hole for Brenton Foley to exploit. I was going to say that it's one thing, to close in on someone. It's another to get past, but Lime Mitch has made that a bit easy for Foley. That said, though, he's holding on for now. And
it probably won't take long here, though, as Foley looks towards the inside, doesn't commit to it, unless Lime Mitch has done a fantastic job protecting the tyres, which, in all honesty, he absolutely could have at this stage. I don't know that he's going to have enough behind him to be able to fight with someone as quick as Foley, as he takes a bit of a peek into turn 4. Is this the move already?
All Mitch has to do is just hold on around the outside. He's got the inside for the next corner. I think Mitch, even though he's quite a bit slower than Foley, if he plays it smart, he could, prove to be difficult to get past. All you've got to do really is just make sure you get that final corner right. If you get turn 6 right and turn 7 right, it shuts off the move into the hairpin. And if obviously you get that final corner right, it shuts off the move into turn 1 and 2. So if he gets those right, he could make it very, very difficult for Brenton Foley, and it could bring Brendan Ross into play if he holds Foley out for long enough.
Yeah, but the problem with that is he's already taking more defensive lines into 8 and into 2. So the more he does that, the more he's going to be working that front tyre, and the more and more it's going to be wearing, which means that his lap times are going to go away, and his defensive capabilities are going to go away as well. He's driven pretty smartly so far, but as he comes out of the last corner with Ross all over the air, Foley all over the rear.
Yeah, he hasn't had a good run out of the final corner. For the most part, he's done a good job, but hasn't had the great exit out of the final corner. It does squeeze Foley to the inside and make it difficult for him. He's going to try and go to the outside and get a better run, but Foley too fast on the I guess better line into turn 1 and for turn 2.
He's sticking around the outside, though. He hasn't given it up yet, and he's managed to stay there, but turn 2 is just too long to be on the outside there, and he does end up giving away that position to race 1 winner, Brendan Foley, who now takes the lead in race 2, just like he said he would, and I'm absolutely blown away by that, to be honest.
Well, and he's done it, has to be said, easy. He's done it easier than what I thought he would, but he's just showing his prowess once again. Lime Mitch did a fairly decent job, but he's getting a bit scruffy now that he's lost the lead, trying to stay onto the back of Brenton Foley. I think he should probably just shelve that idea, because he's been absolutely nowhere near Foley's pace all weekend, and he should just focus on his own race and make sure Brendan Ross behind him doesn't catch up. But Ross himself, he was about 5 seconds behind Lime Mitch earlier on, about a lap ago, but he's made a mistake, and he's only a second and a half now in front of Gary Neville, so he's made a mistake somewhere.
Sector 1, he made that mistake. 3 seconds slower in Sector 1 compared to the front 2. So with that buffer, Lime Mitch could probably concentrate on just consolidating second. He's got, 8 seconds over the next battle.
Yep, and behind them, Neville was doing a decent job, but he's made a couple of mistakes on this lap, and he's falling into the clutches of Preston, who gives him a bit of a serve into the final corner, and I don't think Neville will be too happy with that. And Zach's sort of stuck onto the back of Corey Preston as well. So he's done a bit better in this second race, has Zach. Behind them, you've got Davies and Nolan continue to duke it out. Hathaway not too far away either. And Mike Coulston, he's worked his way up into 10th place. He hasn't made a mistake, and he's got past that little Luke Joyner, Relmy and Steve Bolger battle pack that is now raging.
Still raging.
And then there's
I think that's the same battle pack from the first race as well.
Yeah, and then we've got Brownie 14th place. Brian Walsh 15th, Glenn Miles 16th. Cecil, who we did see in the pits, is in 17th. Termo, who I did catch earlier on in the race, leaving the pit, so he's had, unfortunately, an issue in this one, so that's why he's down in 18th place. Then we've got Ricky Slick, Burko, Thomas Paul, and Cracker, all, unfortunately, out of this race.
So while you were just wrapping up the grid there, Nether made a pretty bold move into turn 1, made it stick, and has taken 11th place from Luke Joyner. That is actually where Nether started the race. So after all that jazz, he's returned to where he was. And that's kind of put Luke Joyner and Bolger in a bit of a battle now as they come through turn 6. But otherwise, a few little gaps throughout the field. I think this battle between Gary Neville and Zach Ross for 5th and 6th is going to be the one to watch as we approach the last 5 minutes of this race.
Well, Gary Neville had lost out, and Preston did get by him at the start of this lap. Because, as you do recall, last lap around, Preston was behind Gary Neville, and he's now streaking away. But Neville at the moment, I think he's just a little bit of a cork in the bottle. Zach's been sort of maintaining the pace that Preston's been running at. So he'll be keen to stick with him, but I don't think Neville's going to make it easy, and then it's going to be even more difficult with Nolan and Davies, who are quite quick as well, right behind him.
Yeah, and that battle between Nolan and Davies is actually hotting up as well. It was only separated by about a tenth of a second as they crossed the line. And as Neville moves to the inside to try and block Zach, who keeps going with it, a big bump in the middle of the corner.
And another bump.
Zach sideways.
And a bump between Nolan and Zach there to get moving. I've got a car behind him. I'm behind me, I can't slow down. And now looks like Nolan's going to try and stick it up the inside.
I think that's more of a defensive move against Davies than it is an attacking move against Zach Ross there, as they swing through 5 and then into 4 and then into 5 here, using all the runoff to maximise their kindness to the tyres. And Nolan has a look into turn 6, and he's going to dive, big dive there, and makes it stick.
They've
now,
both lost a bit of time there, and Davies now having a look up the inside of Zach, but he's not quite close enough. So Nolan does get it done. Ross tried to have a little go at the little kink there. He's ran wide. Davies now on the outside. But it's a long way around there at the hairpin, and I don't think it's going to pull that one off.
Yeah, not quite. Nolan did a very good job to make that dive where he did. Checked everyone else up, and yeah, very lucky for Zach Ross to not lose further positions, because as soon as you get out of the groove, especially at a track like Sydney Motorsport Park, which flows into each corner very, very well, as soon as you get out of that groove, you're very vulnerable to the guys in the train behind you. So it was unlucky for Davies that he wasn't able to capitalise, but very lucky for Zach that he was able to hold on.
Yeah, so it looks like Davies has got a fairly decent run out of the final corner now. And shows his nose, but decides against it at turn 1. And probably just wants to set himself up for a move into turn 2. Do you hear someone on the grass there, the exit of turn 1?
I think it was Preston, Neville, and then Nolan who all went on the followed each other off there as they all missed their braking point. But yeah, all managed to get back on the track very nicely. So play on.
So Davies will want to get past Zach as quickly as possible and catch up onto the back of Nolan in front, who've been battling with each other all race long. And Ross a little bit wide there, and Davies says, I'll take that.
Yeah, made it easy for him in the end, didn't he?
Yeah, just outbroke himself by a couple metres, and you're not going to get the front in with, after being racing these things for 23 minutes, that's for sure.
So now Nolan's immediately on the back of Gary Neville for that 5th position. He's done pretty well for where he is. He covers that inside line, forcing Nolan to go wide, but he's going to get undercut on the exit here, and easy as you like, Nolan's got the inside line.
Yeah, but Neville had a much better exit though. He's much smarter and was able to get out of there much better, and with those two battling, here comes Jane Davies again, filling the mirrors of Scott Nolan's Volkswagen.
Yeah, it's amazing how that quickly you could have to go from attack to defense in a pack like this, especially with the reverse grid race. Now, Neville didn't quite get the best exit out of the last corner, and Scott Nolan is soaking in that slipstream very nicely. Gaps coming down as they get towards turn 1. Is Nolan going to dive? Not quite, but he's going to look to set himself up here for turn 2. Is Neville going to cover? He does, but not enough. Nolan goes to make the dive. He's got the inside line, and moves Neville nicely out of the way.
And Neville smartly cut across the front end, but he's ran wide there. He cut across the front end of Davies because he knew that Davies was going to try and undercut him there, but cut across the front, but then ran wide himself. So that's allowed Nolan to get away, and it's blocked Davies just a little bit.
That was fantastically smart moving from Nolan there, because not only did
see Davies try and make the move stick at turn 5 there, but it was never going to get done.
Yeah, so not only did Nolan make the dive and move Neville out of the way, what he did though was he cut back in the middle of the corner to let Neville get back in line behind him, and then that's why this second gap between Neville and Nolan has been built. It's because Nolan allowed Neville to get back in front of Davies, and because they've been battling, Nolan's just been able to stretch his lead. So very smart driving from Scott Nolan there, and yeah, fantastic work.
He's built out.
Love to see a racer use their brain.
Yeah, and he's now built up about a second and a half or so over that little battle pack, and he's actually travelling. He might be an outside chance because there will be 2 laps to go, because time hasn't expired yet. Well, 2 laps to go for him. Anyway, he's going to cross the line with 12 seconds remaining. And now we've got Davies and Neville side by side. But on that last lap, just having a look at the lap time. Preston, they both had this. Oh, sorry, they didn't have the same lap time. Preston was 1 second slower than Scott Nolan. So Nolan, always we see Neville very, very wide there. That's cost him a position.
It's cost him 2, in fact. Davies has gotten through, and so has Zach. So they resume a battle, and Neville's had to slot back in just ahead of Hathaway in 8th position. So costly mistake there from Neville, who's doing a very good job up at the head of the field.
Yeah, a bit of a shame because, yeah, as you said, doing a good job. Not the quickest driver out there, but he does have these little flashes of speed, and without that mistake, a very good chance of certainly 6th, 7th position there.
It's almost 6th or 7th.
But, yeah, it's probably not going to close onto the back of Zach or Davies now to get that position back. But I was looking at the gap and lap time between Nolan and Preston. It was 1.8 seconds at this first split. And what is it at the second? Still 1.8, but Nolan looks like he's driving a little bit smoother out there than what Preston is.
I'm just going to direct you to the battle for 8th now between Neville and Hathaway. Neville looks like he's absolutely cooked his tyres. He just ran wide at the hairpin, allowing Hathaway to almost get a move on him, but it doesn't look good for Neville at this stage as Hathaway gets a great exit onto the front straight. And Neville's really struggling. You can see that with the way he's trying to drive the car. And yeah, he's going to concede this position to Hathaway pretty easily as we start the last lap of this race. It's lap 17, so same as the first. And it looks like Neville's going to try and hang around.
Oh, he's done it. He's held on. He's cut across the front of Hathaway, and Hathaway had to yield. But Hathaway now having a look up the inside of turn 2, tries to brake a little bit later. Will he pull it up? He does. So able to make the move stick. So good move from Hathaway in the end. Neville did his best. Good driving all round, but Neville couldn't quite hold on. And barring mistake, he'll probably finish there in 9th place. It's looking ahead. Gap between Nolan and Preston is actually blown out just a little bit. So Preston's got his head down and extended that gap. And about 4 seconds between Ross and Preston. The gap between Ross and Mitch, though, 2.2 seconds. A couple more laps, it would have been interesting, but
it is only a 25-minute race.
But yeah.
And as we head up to the head of the field with one corner left, Brenton Foley is probably going to round up. I think that's Glenn Miles as well.
He's getting out of the way.
Yeah. Beautiful race from Brendan Foley. He paced that to perfection, and he's going to take a perfect weekend here for the AMS Oz TCR first round of the season at Sydney Motorsport Park.
Yeah, so FCR continue their dominance on these Monday Night Touring Car Series, and Brenton Foley continues his fantastic form in these front-wheel drive cars. Lime Mitch will finish in second for race 2. Brendan Ross will finish in 3rd place, so good night for FCR Motorsport Team Sgrouse. And then we have Corey Preston in 4th. Nolan will finish 5th. Davies in 6th. Zach, pretty good effort from him in 7th place. Mitch Hathaway in 8th. Neville 9th. And Mike Coulston showing up in the second race. Fantastic effort from him to finish 10th. And in 10th place.
Yep. Next up is Nether in 11th and Luke Joyner continuing their battle from race 1. Termo will be next across the line, but he's a lap down. Steve Bolger will take home 13th. And then we will have Brownie and then Brian Walsh will be the last two to round out the field. What a race. Okay, I knew you said this was going to happen, but I am still blown away with how efficiently Foley cut through the field to end up in second after only 2 laps. 2 laps to pass through, 19 cars? That's a mad drive from Brendan Foley.
Yeah, well, he's done it every time I've had these reverse races. He always seems to just side his way through the field, and the first lap in particular, he's able to just pick up spots where perhaps people are a little bit more conservative, or they're looking at someone else in front of him, and he just is able to nip through and just take these positions. So, but still, 23 car grid. Obviously, he didn't start from 23rd; he started 21st. So, move up. Is it 10, 11 spots? Incredible.
Yeah, wild stuff. Absolutely wild. Who's your driver of the race then for that race?
Well, if you're going to go on outright pace, it has to be Foley being able to just scythe through the field and take the win.
Who's your driver of the race who isn't Foley? We've talked about enough about Foley.
Well, like Mitch, he did what he had to do. I think he's probably a pretty good honourable mention. So he's in for a shout, and then Zach, he also did a pretty good effort. I'm not sure. I don't think he would have done too much practice, going by him not having the track. The same with Steve Burko. So for him in that second race to pick up 7th is a pretty decent result in the end there.
Yeah, Zach would be my vote as well. He only lost 1 position in the entire race, and that's with the likes of Foley, Ross, Preston, Nolan, Davies coming through and passing him. So he did an excellent job to pass the guys in front and then hold off some of the quicker guys behind him. Another nomination for me is Mike Colston. Didn't appear in the first race, but up 13 positions in the second race. That's a pretty solid effort from someone who likes to affectionately be known as the Saudi Camel.
Well, he did show some pretty decent speed in practice, and he was pretty. He told me before the race that he was actually quite gutted. He was lucky that he was able to make the second race, but he was actually quite gutted that he had to miss the first one. So yeah, good effort from him to come through the field, and he didn't look like he had any damage on his Alfa Romeo either. So some nice clean driving from him, and good solid top 10 to top it off.
Yeah, fantastic. So we've got a few drivers in the room here. Now, I don't know who's here because I don't know people's Discord names compared to their racing names, but we'll start with Scott Nolan because that's a name I do remember. Scott, great work through the field to finish 6th in that second race. How'd you see that race going for you?
Oh, yeah, it was a really tough race. I think I got hit off the track by the same person like 4 times. Put me back behind the mess again, but I'll have a chat to him and tell him where his middle pedal is, and we'll go again next round. But look, the 2 FCR boys got through the rubbish a lot better than we did at the start, and they were able to drive on and sort of pick them off one by one and go into the sunset, and we just got stuck with the mid pack, and they raced pretty hard down there. But look, I think we came away with top 5. I think we got 5th in the end, so that's a good weekend, seeing I thought I was going to be well off the pace. So happy days.
Yeah, congratulations on your podium and your 6th place in race 2. Now, I do think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think we've got Brendan Foley in here. Is that right? It is. Okay, good. I got that right. Brendan Foley, I don't know how you did it, but you were in second after 2 laps in that reverse grid race.
Just a bit of car placement, but
performance-enhancing drugs.
That was mad. That was absolutely
mad. People left some holes open, so I threw the car in there and when a few people had a few concertinas into some corners, I drove around the outside and kind of knew that I had the grip to hold it in there in the first few laps, and I knew that I needed to set myself up really early. That's how I managed to have some success in some of the older series TCC races, so that was the plan as always, and it paid off this time. And then just as usual, just took care of the bars and managed the tyres for the rest of the race.
Yeah, I was actually extremely impressed with how you closed that gap to the lead. I was kind of expecting you to go a bit mad after forcing your way through the field, not aggressively forcing your way through, but still. Yeah, you only made the pass for the lead just after half distance. Do you think about that while you're driving? Do you think, okay, I've got a gap ahead of me now, I should just relax and treat the tires nicely, and the gap will come back?
Pretty much, yeah. I've learnt from the past series that tire wear is extremely important. So as long as I was making half a second or roundabouts that per lap on the leader, I was pretty happy with that pace because I worked out that at that pace I'd have enough laps to get there. And from then on, it was just making sure I didn't destroy the tires and ruin my chance.
Yeah, congratulations on your perfect start to the TCR Championship.
Thanks very much. It's no Corolla, but I'm happy with the Volvo.
Beautiful. Who else do we have in here? Do we have Brendan Ross at all?
Yeah, that's Rossi 96.
Oh, there we go. That was easy. Brendan Ross, great race from you. Not the best result from the first race. Can you take us through the cause of that penalty?
Yeah, the track cut snuck up on me, so I knew I was getting close to the end. But I think when me and Michael Ford, I think it was
Yeah.
going through turn 2, just sort of got held up a little bit on the curb, and you know what track cuts are like, they just pop out of nowhere. So that one got me there.
It was unfortunate for you, but they gave you a pretty good starting position for race 2. Did you try and tag onto the back of Foley as he cut through, or was it just too quick for you?
Being Foley's teammate for the last couple seasons, I do know that he's probably one of the best coming from the field. He'd come from last to first if he could. So sort of tried to tag in the back of him and follow him, but just sort of got myself tangled up with a few drivers and sort of lost the pace between me and Foley. So just sort of lost it there. But pretty happy to come up. I think it was 12 positions, so that was a pretty good effort on my part, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 12 positions again. So amazing drive from you, and congratulations on third in that second race.
Lovely, thank you.
Anyone else want to chat, or is everyone else just here to hang out? So who's Dobby? We've got someone in here called Dobby the house dog.
That's Corey Preston.
Corey, great race from you as well. Up 12 paces as well, so you followed Ross through the field. How'd you go managing your tyres in that last stint? Because it looks like you were beginning to struggle at the end of that first race.
Yeah, I underestimated the tyre wear on these front-wheel drive TCR cars, and I suffered heavily for it in race 1. But yeah, that race 2, that was carnage.
In a good way? It looked pretty good.
No, it was. Yeah, I think the cars in front of me, they were going 3 wide into turn 1. They all tried out braking each other, and I followed them in there, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that was messy, but yeah.
So it was a 4th in race 2, and I think a 4th in race 1 as well. Are you happy with your first weekend for TCR?
Not really. I probably should have been fighting for the podium in race 1, but that error that I made going into that corner with the massive curb on the inside, that was just silly. I potentially threw a second or first away, so not very happy with myself overly, but yeah, at least we finished both races this time.
Yeah, that's a good point, and still a long season ahead. Always important to pick up points where you can.
Yeah, I'm just glad I got back to 4th in race 2 and didn't suffer any car damage or any major car damage. But yeah, coming through the field, it's an experience, I tell you what.
Yeah, it looked it. We had a lot of fun commentating, didn't we, Lewis?
Yeah, it's certainly pretty hectic out there, and I'm glad I'm in the commentary box instead of in the cockpit for those reverse grid races. That's for sure.
Cool. Thank you very much for the great racing, everyone, and thank you for the place getters for having a bit of a chat to us. So, Lewis, where are we next time in TCR on AMS Oz?
Oh, funny you mentioned that. Unfortunately, the background is going to be the main screen. I'll see if I can actually bring it up. There we are. On your screen. So up next in 2 weeks, September 9, is going to be Phillip Island. So that'll be a very, very interesting one with lots of long, sweeping, high-speed corners. So that's one. I have done a little bit of driving there, just a handful of laps, and it's going to be tricky. but it's going to be fun. And then for round 3 after that, we've got Malala. So that's one that Automobilista Australia hasn't driven it before. And I reckon that's going to have some fantastic racing with a couple great passing opportunities as well.
Yeah, that's my neck of the woods, Malala Raceway. I've actually been out there marshalling a few times, and it looks like an awesome track to drive. And yeah, some really, really good passing opportunities. On Phillip Island, though, I can already say my front tyres are already scared just looking at that calendar.
Yeah, that the front right is certainly going to cop an absolute battering around there, but that's something for the drivers to sort out, and not me.
Yeah, lucky us, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, from myself, Lewis Wedding, and from Michael, I can't pronounce your last name.
Zalavari.
Yes, from myself and Michael Zalavari. Hopefully you've enjoyed round 1 of the Automobilista Australia TCR Oz series, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time at Phillip Island. But, hopefully you've enjoyed this one, and hopefully see you in 2 weeks. Cheers.